line. That's the only line that will not have disruptions.
Imagine this, paying a fee to drive in one specific area during a certain time of day. Well, now there's a traffic finding plan being talked about for Manhattan that would institute something called congestion pricing. I don't like the sound of that, but Arthur Chan is live in Lower Manhattan tonight to explain all this. Arthur.
Well, you're not going to like the sound of it if you drive, but it is a concept that you would be familiar with if you already use the Port Authority's Hudson River crossings, including here at the Holland Tunnel, where drivers are charged more during rush hours. The idea is to disperse some of that traffic so traffic can move a little bit more consistently throughout the course of the day. Well, now one influential business group here in New York City has been quietly, secretly putting together a plan to sell to the city the concept of charging cars a premium for driving on Manhattan streets. The basic question is how many of the cars you see here would disappear if the city started charging them for coming into the most congested parts of Manhattan. The influential business group Partnership for New York City has spent 9 months studying what's called congestion pricing. It already works in other major cities like London. Transportation experts say it would work here.
New York is very well suited to congestion pricing. London, the other world capital that has really tried congestion pricing, has really reduced central area traffic.
In return for congestion pricing, cities see less gridlock, more bus lanes and bike lanes, wider sidewalks, cleaner air, and more people walking and taking mass transit. Sounds good, but it carries a political price, with opposition especially strong in the other boroughs where many of the drivers come from. Not surprisingly, City Hall today treated congestion pricing like roadkill.
That's very tough politically, and the mayor expressed some interest in East River tolls in his first term, and he didn't push it very hard, but he was quickly shouted down by politicians in Brooklyn and Queens.
Under the partnership study, some 840,000 cars come into the central part of Manhattan each day. Those cars would be subject to charges between $4 to $7 using some sort of prepaid system verified by video cameras, not using traditional toll barriers. Drivers we talked to were split.
If it eases traffic, I'm all for it.
It's awful. I think it doesn't even make sense.
But how bad does traffic get in the city?
It gets pretty bad, but I don't think we should have to pay.
Well, that driver is going to get what she wants, at least for now, because transportation experts say sooner or later this city will have to implement congestion pricing, but it's only when traffic gets bad enough that everybody in all the boroughs is so frustrated with the conditions. They say we came close in 1999 and in 2000 when the economy was strong, but that right now the political cost just makes it simply impossible. But I guess we will see it sooner or later, just not any time sooner than later. We're live in Tribeca tonight. Arthur Chien for the WB11 News at 10. Back to you, Kaity, Jim.
John Jim.
Actually, I'm just Jim.
It's okay, it's Friday, Arthur. We forgive you.
Yeah, don't we know it. Coming up, President Bush goes on the offensive about Iraq this Veterans Day, and it sparks a nasty political exchange. A live report is next.
Plus, tonight's talker, every second counted. A mother getting on a subway desperately tries to free the stroller with her child in it.
Well, one thing for sure, there was no order in this court. So how did this violent brawl start?
She says she's in disbelief. A mother lashes out over a report on an amusement park accident that took the life of her son.
And the government wants new warning labels for a popular form of birth control. We'll be back in 60 seconds.
On the WB's Big Sunday, the hit series People magazine rates with the best. Supernatural. But first, it's a charmed battle of the sexes. Okay, not a fair fight.
Where have you been? Well, I killed off a bunch of male demons, and I scratched my pretty belt again. Oh, no, really?
Whoa, someone's got anger issues.
Men.
Fresh Charmed, the WB's Big Sunday lineup.
Sunday starting at 7, only on the WB11.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing shortly. For those of you connecting to Atlanta, you'll be at gate A9. Buenos Aires, A17. Back from a long night out with the entire Tokyo office, capped off by a karaoke rendition of I Am Woman that certainly no one will forget, and still pulling off that 7-figure deal the next morning without a hitch. You're at gate C21. Denver, C10.
We know why you fly. We're American Airlines. And when you fly American, get our lowest fares at AA.com, guaranteed.
It's tonight's talker, a horrifying scene at a subway station caught on tape. A baby carriage got stuck in the subway doors as the train began to leave the station in Seoul, South Korea. The baby's mother, you can see there, quickly grabbed the baby from the stroller and put the child on the subway platform, but her coat was stuck in the door. Another woman tried to help her, and both were dragged for several feet before the train stopped, just feet from a tunnel. The mother told reporters she thought she was going to die. Miraculously, the mother suffered only minor injuries, and her baby, who was picked up by another Good Samaritan, is okay.
Well, different mother's pain tonight after a final report is released about the amusement park ride that took her young son's life this past summer in Westchester County. She says the buck is being passed for her son's death. Glenn Thompson explains.
We don't ever want to see this happen again, and we want to fight so that this will never, ever happen again to any family.
A mother's outrage after a Westchester County report blames her son for his own death.
This just further shows me that there was absolutely no supervision in that 1,200-foot tunnel.
It was supposed to be a fun day at an amusement park for 7-year-old John Kelly, but instead it ended in his death. The young child crushed to death under a conveyor belt on the old mill back in August. A report issued by the Westchester County Department of Public Safety today finding that the child who rode the ride alone died accidentally through no fault of the operators of the ride. The report saying 3 witnesses told the boy not to get out of the boat.
3 female witnesses, ages 13, 8, and 7, who, when they were on the ride, saw the child walking in the water, generally characterizing their statement to us is that they called out to the child, watch out, something to that effect.
One of the things that I'm hearing are that there were 3 witnesses that my son was walking around inside of that tunnel, and I would like to know where those witnesses were when I was hysterically screaming for help, for someone to find him or give us any indication of knowing where he was.
The child's body wasn't found for close to an hour, his death coming 15 months after a 7-year-old was killed on a ride called the Scrambler at Ride Playland. The report concludes that Ye Old Mill was understaffed and the operators undertrained. But critics say it unfairly pins the blame on the child for getting out of the boat. Attorneys for the family say the report is a whitewash.
They issued a self-serving report that was incomplete in many principal factors.
The child's mother plans on filing a lawsuit next week, claiming the county is at fault for her son's death. I'm Glenn Thompson for the WP11 News at 10.
An update now on a story we told you about last night. 19-year-old Jennifer Grabowski was charged with driving under the influence after a car accident on Grand Central Parkway in Queens. Her friend, 18-year-old Bettina Madrid, was killed. Today, Grabowski was arrested again. So was her mother, 51-year-old Grace Grabowski, and 2 19-year-old friends. All 4 are charged with criminal trespassing for trying to retrieve personal items from Jennifer's SUV, which is in police custody. Police say the 4 were told the items could not be taken from the vehicle because they are considered evidence.
A wild police chase to show you. Take a look at this. It began when a suspected drunk driver tried to get away from police, speeding through traffic in Southern California. It ended when he slammed into another car. When the 21-year-old driver got out of the vehicle, police rushed him, took him into custody. 3 people in the car were slightly hurt.
All right, let's look at some of the big stories around the nation tonight. Some people just can't go anywhere or do anything without a cell phone in their ear, even when they're robbing a bank. Police in Virginia are looking for a woman who held up 4 Wachovia bank branches while chatting on her phone. They say the woman has hit 4 Wachovia bank branches in recent weeks in the northern part of the state. Talking on the phone. A courtroom in Tacoma, Washington became the site of a brawl. It happened after a man was sentenced to 30 years in prison for his role in the beating death of a 69-year-old retiree. Fists started flying when a woman suggested the sentence was unfair and that because of the victim's age, he didn't have long to live anyway. Nobody was seriously hurt. And a close call for 6 men fishing off the coast of Oregon. Their boat started taking on water, then flipped right over. The Coast Guard tried to help pump the water out of the sinking ship. When that failed, it's more a boat than a ship. But anyway, when it failed, the men just jumped overboard, and a rescue boat picked them up. out of the water.
As you know, this was Veterans Day across America. Here's what was going on around our area to mark the holiday. A ceremony at the Intrepid Sea, Air and Space Museum on the west side paid tribute to our men and women in uniform, especially those who lost their lives in Iraq and Afghanistan. Veterans made their way up Fifth Avenue during the city's annual Veterans Day Parade. This year's march commemorated the 60th anniversary of the end of World War II. One spectator said this was the largest crowd he'd seen in a long time. Attendance at the Veterans Day Parade had fallen off in recent years. And on Long Island, Congressman Steve Israel honored 93-year-old veteran Anita Borey. She was a volunteer in the Marine Corps during World War II. Ms. Borey took home 2 medals for distinguished service to the country. Nearly 400,000 women served in the military during World War II.
President Bush under fire tonight after he fired back against the increasingly vocal critics of the Iraq War. In his annual Veterans Day speech, the president defended his decision to go to war, but some Democrats had a very different perspective. Grant Rampey is live at the White House with details for us. Grant.
Well, that's right, Kaity. Senator John Kerry says the president is playing the politics of fear and smear. Sort of sounds like shades of last year's big campaign, but make no mistake, this is a campaign of a different kind. President Bush on this Veterans Day addressing a crowd of military families firing back at critics of his Iraq policy.
While it's perfectly legitimate to criticize my decision or the conduct of the war, it is deeply irresponsible to rewrite the history of how that war began.
Today's speech part of a new White House strategy to answer charges voiced by many Democrats that top members of the Bush team twisted what they knew about weapons of mass destruction in the run-up to the war. A charge repeated again after the president spoke.
This administration manipulated and misused intelligence information that rushed us to war.
Look for Democrats to keep hammering away at the theme, aware that there probably couldn't be a better time to go after the president. One top aide has been indicted, another still could be, and the polls seem to be going from bad to worse. New numbers show that nearly 6 in 10 Americans believe the president intentionally misled the country before the war. Also, 6 in 10 would no longer describe him as honest. So far, Vice President Cheney, who laid a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns today, has not been enlisted.